time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Coluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day. So join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
It's the biggest game of the year. I mean, it is. It's really no different. I mean, it's the biggest game of the year. And if we hadn't won last week, then this game wouldn't be as big.
But at the end of the day, it comes back to our preparation, how we prepare. We had a very good start today. Really pleased with the attitude, the effort, and the enthusiasm we had on the field today. And I know our guys will go compete. We plan on showing up.
Did you guys do anything fun around the facility for Halloween?
No. What are you dressed up as?
Underpaid reporter. Like
it's red zone and third down day. It's not Halloween. It's too
This is the man who doesn't even recognize Thanksgiving. You think he's going to recognize Halloween?
It's a meal. It's a meal.
You look at his waistline. He recognized Thanksgiving.
This is true.
Thanksgiving is a meal. It's not a day.
Muschamp. I tell you what, I was finishing watching the game, USC Vanderbilt last night, and the intentional grounding call was maybe one of the worst calls I've ever seen, much less intentional grounding. I'm talking about any call. And then, of course,
there were about 5 calls that qualified under that moniker during that game.
Well, that one in particular, I mean, goodness gracious. And then, of course, on the sideline, I thought Muschamp was going to have one of his moments. His eyes were all glassed over. He was in the official's ear, and I thought it was going to happen. I thought he was going to have one of those Muschamp meltdowns.
Did you see the one he had? He called timeout specifically to yell at the official for having Jake Bentley get kicked in the head with a knee.
Yeah, that was tough,
That was another one where he basically called – he did the old NBA move where he called the timeout just to give Hubert Owens an earful.
I would like to know what the official was thinking when he called that intentional grounding.
He wasn't.
When there was no pressure on the quarterback, there was no quarterback in his face. It was obvious that the quarterback and the receiver just weren't on the same page.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not intentional grounding.
After I saw that call, the one thing I thought about was having Stephen Garcia on the sideline, because I think Hubert Owens would have popped him again. He'd had another flashback.
Yeah. Anyway, welcome in Talking Tuesday. It is Halloween, so I'll ask the guys here. And Brian, you can participate. We'll kick things off this way before we get to coaches and phone calls, and make it quick. If you could take over the face and body of your favorite sports star, I'm not talking about a costume. If you could assume the body of your favorite sports star for a day, for Halloween, who would it be?
Well, I was going to go as you, but all the wigs that I could find had too much hair.
Uh-huh. No, seriously, this is a serious question.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you mine, of course.
Go ahead.
Larry Bird.
Okay.
Larry Bird, most handsome athlete of all time.
The greatest weapon known to man, they think it's the hydrogen bomb. It's not. It's the sky hook. I'd be Kareem.
So you would want to be Kareem, yeah?
I'd be Marv Albert.
Marv Albert.
Yeah.
He's not really an athlete.
Yes.
He's my
You can't find an athlete?
He's my sports star. I always admired the announcers more than I admired the athletes.
Brian?
Can I do an athlete's
You got to hit your
producer live there.
There you go. Get your right one over there. Brian, can you get it? Can you get your
on the right side, Brian, the one that says producer live.
Okay.
Yeah. I will come back to you.
There we go. I got it. There we go. There you go.
Can
I do a celebrity spouse?
Yeah.
Serena Williams' husband.
He's a good-looking guy?
I don't know.
Oh, you just care about Serena. That's not the point of the question. The point of the question was, in the sports world, I guess you qualify. I said the sports world.
Steph Curry.
Who would you want to take over? Whose body would you want to have as your body and face for a Halloween?
Marv Albert.
Larry Bird.
And it counts.
All right, it is a Talking Tuesday. And I was up at Clemson today. Tigers getting ready for NC State. And you heard Dabo, biggest game of the year.
Oh, how is that different than every other week, Dabo?
Well, I mean, the stakes are getting higher, though. You know what he means.
Yeah.
You understand, Dabo. Yeah. Any coach would say that. It's the biggest game of the year because it's the next one, and you're in their position. The college football playoff rankings come out tonight, a little bit after 7. What do you think? Do you think Clemson will crack the top 4?
Not tonight. I don't think so. I think they'll be 5 or 6.
I think 5.
You know, they have not been out of the top 4 in any of the rankings of the last 2 years.
Here's their problem, and Pro and I were talking about this earlier today. It's Notre Dame. Notre Dame is really upsetting the proverbial apple cart when it comes to the, I guess, the order that this usually goes. Usually you get one from each conference, but the fact is that Notre Dame is that wild card.
Yes.
I want to know how the voters consider Notre Dame. They're not part of the ACC, but they play 5 ACC schools, including NC State they've already beaten. So are they considered a de facto member of?
No,
they're an independent.
They're an independent, but you know there are special rules for Notre Dame when it comes to the playoff, when it comes to the bowl system.
And if they're
always
ranked,
have been.
And if they're ranked high enough, they automatically get a New Year's Six bowl. Also.
So yeah, you got to consider Notre Dame. Look, they're having a great year, 6-1, I believe. The people who will be upset to some degree will be Oklahoma when it comes out and Ohio State's ranked ahead of them.
Which I don't agree with, because I don't really have a lot of faith in the Big Ten. Although really, I don't have a lot of faith in either the Big Ten or the Big 12. If I was ranking it, I would go Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, Clemson.
Some people think it'll be Georgia 1 because of the schedule.
Ding, ding, ding. I'm one that believes it may be a little
Clemson,
Georgia.
Clemson has defeated, if I remember this correctly, Clemson has more wins over FBS teams than anybody else in the ranking.
Because they haven't played their FCS game yet. That's why.
Well, but I mean, I'm talking about Power 5. I'm not FBS.
Yes.
I'm talking about Power 5. They've played, Well, look who they've beaten though. They've beaten Auburn. They've beaten Virginia Tech on the road. They've beaten Louisville on the road. Now you can believe the quality of those teams up or down, however you want to. But at the time they played those games, those were big-time games, and 2 were on the road. So you got to give them some credit for that.
There's always about, and again, the rankings come down to this. It's not about just who you lose to, but it's about when you lose. And whether you like it or not, the loss to Syracuse is still too close in the minds of the committee than, say, Notre Dame's loss to Georgia earlier in the season. So in that vein, you're looking at a much different situation.
All right, so we'll hear from the coaches tonight. Will was over at USC. As far as a couple of quick notes from both locations up at Clemson, not a lot of news injury-wise. Everything looks pretty good. Dexter Lawrence is fine. Mark Fields, they hope, will be back this week, possibly. Marcus Edmond is practicing, but he's still not ready for game action yet. So he is, from a game standpoint, as of today, he's still out.
Both Corey Helms and Dennis Daly got knocked around in the game. Helms suffered an injury, did not play the rest of the way. They did say he felt that he could go back in, but they kept him out as a precaution. He should be back this week, as should Dennis Daly. Chad Terrell ran on Tuesday morning. He should be back for the game as a depth wide receiver. Sherrod Green, who was out because of a high thigh bruise, he should be back as well. The only guy who might be of question would be Terry Gujar and also Malik Young on the offensive line. They're wondering whether or not he might be reevaluated later on this week. He probably is the furthest away from at least being ready. But all in all, at least for the most part, this time of the season, the Gamecocks are fairly healthy.
Okay, and in the NFL, the trade deadline today was at 4 o'clock. A bit of surprise here in that the Panthers traded receiver Kelvin Benjamin to the Bills for a 3rd and a 7th round draft pick.
I don't understand that move. I really don't.
Well, the thing I don't understand is this.
Why would the Panthers trade a key cog from a team that's got a chance?
Not only that,
to go deep.
Not only that, it's not like their offense has been very high-powered this season.
Yes. And he's the guy that can really just intimidate defensive backs because he's so big, he can screen them off in the end zone. And you know that Cam Newton does not like this trade.
You know, in his little over 2 years, this is his 3rd season, he has already scored 18 touchdowns in a little over 2 1/4 seasons.
The only thing I can think of is they're not scoring with Kelvin Benjamin. They can just easily not score without him, and you can get value back for him. That's the only justification I could put in there. But at the same time, if you're not scoring with Kelvin Benjamin, imagine how bad it might be without him.
A 3rd and a 7th round pick. I get the numbers, but I don't know if the quality will be there to replace a guy as good as he is.
I'm not justifying it.
Yeah. All right, we'll be right back.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Welcome back in. Talking Tuesday, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the professor, Tom Hayes. 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com, and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Not happy with a lot of you Twitter people from the other night.
Yeah. You guys got a lot. You took that thing way too far.
Well, for those who don't know, the other night, after the Will Muschamp conference call, which on Sunday, as you probably know if you follow us, we always provide you with the Muschamp and the Sweeney conference calls, the full audio, taking time out of our family time on our Sundays to listen to that stuff, clean it up.
Cuts into my drinking time, Corn.
Put it out there for you. I know it's part of what we do. I'm not looking for any sort of a pat on the back or anything. It's part of what we do, but we do it. Nobody else does. It gives you a chance to hear the coaches in full context.
Happy to do it.
And so Will here puts a headline on the Muschamp piece.
Direct quote.
A direct quote with a little bit of a change at the front just to make it clear what he was talking about.
Exactly.
What he was talking about was Georgia has better players now than when he played at Georgia. That's what he was talking about. And your quote was?
It said, Georgia's got better players than me now.
Yeah, me, comma, now.
Yes.
And somehow, some way,
people read into that thinking that we were trying to say that he was talking about South Carolina's players instead of him.
That he was putting down his players, and thus we were putting Muschamp down by quoting Muschamp in a way that he was putting down his players and taking him out of context. Even though right under the headline, the very first line of your story referred to the fact that he was a 1994 graduate of Georgia and was going to Athens as a head coach for the first time.
And a teammate of Kirby Smart's on that 94 team.
And I mean the people, some of you you must just be living in the basement of your parents and have nothing else to do.
Now people read with their eyes closer to their chest than they do closer to their brain.
And what you're going to understand as far as I'm concerned when it comes to Twitter, for those of you who might have been on there who are listening, here's my message to you. And I'm talking about the idiots. Now, when I say the idiots, I don't mean the nearly 16,000 followers that we have. I'm talking about the group that wants to jump on anything and everything that you might say, whether it's about Clemson, it's about South Carolina. They want to twist it into an argument, and then they want to call you names and degrade you. And when you fire back, oh, well, you're not being professional. Oh, you're sure not using journalism, da-da-da-da. Well, let me tell you, we're not going to sit here and let you hammer us when you're wrong. Okay, when we're wrong and you correctly hammer us, absolutely. But when you're wrong and you want to make something up, we're not going to sit here quietly and let it go by the boards. Now, one thing we've never done and we never will is block people. Okay, I'm not into doing that. So we let all comers come on the site and say what they're going to say. But don't expect to just get away with robbery here when you come on Sports Talk SC, especially when you're wrong. And there was no way you could read that headline and twist it into something negative about Muschamp or the Gamecocks.
I think you and I speak for all three of us, I think in this room, is that if you're going to come and try and downgrade us, you ain't going to do it without a little bit of power coming back your way. That's all I have to say.
And of course, the insults start to fly back and forth. And there's no end to it because everybody wants the last word.
Sure.
You might say, hey, you're a moron. And the next guy's going to write back and go, well, you're a dip doodle, whatever.
And I've been here a grand total of 3 months. I haven't even had enough time to develop a bias against anybody.
Long. Oh, I thought you said develop enemies. It doesn't take long.
No, I'm saying to develop a bias.
I just have one credo. I do not battle with an unarmed person.
Okay. Who's unarmed?
The person who sits across from me and wants to scream and yell and call me names.
Well, communicating through Twitter is not the best way to communicate with somebody because a lot is lost in 140 characters.
I told you about the quote that a friend of mine said the other day. Some people aren't happy unless they're feeling aggrieved.
Yes, I guess. I mean, I don't get it. All you did was put a story out And the point of the story was to have the Muschamp full audio out there for Gamecock fans who wanted to hear what he said on Sunday to have a chance to hear. I thought that was a nice thing, a good thing.
And I literally, I wrote the story. I went away, went and made a nice dinner.
Oh, I was the one that fell into it.
Yeah. Well, here's the problem.
Thank you very much.
You texted me and you said, "What's going on our Twitter?" And I had no idea. I had no idea. And then I'm sitting there, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I had no idea people could take it that way.
I try to use Twitter as a news outlet. You know, we have information.
It's a fantastic tool.
On an
full of tools.
Opinion. But this back and forth nonsense has got to stop when it comes to the nastiness. I mean, you know, if you got and this thing about it was constant clickbait. You're doing clickbait.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is clickbait? And everybody's explaining what clickbait is. I get what clickbait
There's
is.
a difference
but
between
that wasn't what clickbait is. I think when you put something up there to get somebody to come read your story, and it's like the story is nothing like your headline.
Right.
It's nothing like what you were alluding to.
It was an attention-grabbing headline. Attention-grabbing headlines are not clickbait. Attention-grabbing headlines are what many journalism outlets read, you know, tabloid newspapers in New York, for the Washington Post, things that sell newspapers, things that get people to click on sites. It's whatever, man. This is what journalism is. If you were mad that that headline caused you to click on that, tough. Okay? That's what our business is.
Well, if you just read
the article
underneath, you would know
no misdirect
what was going to be in the audio. And it was the full audio of Muschamp's Sunday night conference call. Had nothing to do with Muschamp saying anything about his players compared to Georgia's players. It was a self-deprecating quote from Muschamp.
We all laughed. We all laughed.
Days at Georgia.
Stupid.
All right. We've been sitting on that for a couple of days.
And by the way, you guys write your own headlines. You know, people may be surprised that when you get the newspapers or whatever, and even on websites, people who write the story don't write their headline.
People get mad at the writer for the headline. The writer doesn't do the headline.
Exactly.
Let's go to Jeff in Sumter. First call tonight here on Sports Talk. Hello, Jeff.
What's going on, Phil?
Man, just having a party.
Hey, I hear you, man.
Hey, Jeff, let me ask you our theme question.
Open to everybody, man.
Let me ask you our theme question of the night. If you could assume the body of your favorite sports personality, who would it be for tonight for Halloween?
Without a doubt, Emmitt Smith, man. I grew up loving Emmitt, man.
So you'd want Emmitt Smith's body to become yours?
Exactly right. I would love to have a little bit of his money and a little bit of his fame too, man.
What do you have for?
And that offensive line he ran behind.
Go ahead, Jeff.
But what I called about, you know, it's funny you guys are talking about Twitter because, you know, I'm a huge Bulldog fan. Shout out to Bulldog Bert. But I'm glad you guys are open to everybody. You know, I thought it was funny, you know, the defensive player for Florida was running his mouth off about Jake Fromm throwing a slant, and that's exactly what took him out. Sonny Michel running the slant this past Saturday.
Yeah, South Carolina's got to figure out. They got to have to figure out how to cover those backs coming out of the backfield. They have to figure out how to keep Chubb from busting a tackle and breaking it outside. I think Muschamp was talking about that today.
He was, and that's the thing that scares me about this game from a South Carolina perspective is the fact that the exact thing that Vanderbilt was able to exploit against them on Saturday is exactly what Georgia is going to try to exploit, and they better be on their P's and Q's with that, because if they're able to capture the edge and test the boundaries, they'll be able to score a lot of points.
Yeah. All right, so thank you very much for your phone call. Break is coming up. We'll continue with calls on the other side, and we'll hear from Muschamp, and we'll hear from Sweeney, and we've got recruiting for you tonight as well.
Plenty of stuff.
And we've got a visit from Kerry Tharp at Darlington, too. All that's coming your way here tonight on Sports Talk. What else we want to mention to you? Oh, how about this from Bovado? Odds on the next coach at Florida. Dan Mullen is 9-2. Scott Frost is 5-1. Willie Taggart is 6-1.
They like Taggart a lot.
Mike Norvell is 7-1. Justin Fuente is 8-1, as is Chip Kelly. And down the list here, 75-1.
Lane Kiffin or Spurrier?
Steve Spurrier.
Steve Spurrier. 75-1. All right, we're back. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network from downtown Columbia. A reminder, tomorrow nights we are in Aiken with our good friends at WKSX. We're going to be at the Wing Place.
It's literally the one remote that I've been most looking forward to all year long.
Well, it should be a lot of fun. Going to be at a great – we have been at some great locations.
Not that I didn't like any of the other remotes.
Yes,
but
yes. Every place we've been has been great. This one should be great as well. Our next edition of Pigskin Preview Live, and we're going to be, as I mentioned, at the Wing Place, 732 East Pine Log Road in Aiken. It's part of the annual Border Bash. This is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Fans of USC and Georgia get together. They have a good time. I'm sure they fight with one another in a figurative sense,
civilized fashion.
Not literally. A little bit of picking at one another and challenging one another. And of course, our affiliate host is Oldies KSX, WKSX 92.7, one of our great affiliates here on Sports Talk. So come out and join us tomorrow night, the Wing Place on East Pine Log Road in Aiken. We'll be there for the entire show from 6 to 8. Hope you'll come out and visit with us. Also, our poll question at SportsTalkSC.com. Scale of 1 to 5, what chance do you give USC of upsetting Georgia? Most people, about 49%, give the Gamecocks 1.
1 out of 5.
25% give them a 2. 15% give them a 3. Actually, just under 6% give them a 5.
Interesting.
How many points you get for signing your name on the SAT?
400 you used to.
Okay.
15 stout Gamecock fans think they'll get a 5.
In the old 1,600-point scale, it was a 400, I think.
All right, back to the phones we go. It's Jonathan in Rock Hill. Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
Hey, how you guys?
Good.
I just had a thought on the end of the race on Sunday. I'm a little stewing about.
Jonathan, are you on a speakerphone?
No, I'm not earbuds in, so I can take them out. That makes it better.
Yeah, it's hard to understand you. Can you understand him?
Yeah, he wanted to talk about the end of the NASCAR race on Sunday.
Okay. Having a hard time understanding you there. If you can clear up your line for us.
There you go.
Oh, much better. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, my thought end of the race on Sunday. I'm mostly a Hendrick Motorsports fan, so I support all 4 drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought the way, this is my thing. You can move somebody like Chase did. He moved Brad, and that's okay. But I just feel like the way Denny did it, basically what Denny did, it was a dump and wreck.
Yeah.
You don't wreck somebody. That's what he did. And then to have Denny Hamlin, he played like he didn't do anything wrong. And he said, after the race was going to come from Chase Elliott said he told him that someone hit Denny from behind, Chase said. And Denny said someone hit him, and there was nobody even close to Denny Hamlin. The closest guy was Kyle Busch, and Kyle Busch wasn't even close to Denny's bumper. So Denny Hamlin, I was watching it live, and I just knew, I told my parents, I'm like, I know Denny Hamlin will come with someone BS with excuse, and that's exactly what happened. And I don't blame Chase Elliott at all for the way he handled it. Like, he handled it as good as a young driver can. And
yeah, I expected something to happen. I expected either a fight in the garage or the pit area, or I expected him on the cool down lap to come around and smack Hamlin. Of course, Hamlin got mixed up. Let me think now. Didn't he the last wreck that allowed Busch to win? Didn't Hamlin get mixed up in something too?
He drove Ryan Blaney purposely. Like, he drove Ryan Blaney into like the inside wall and caused the wreck.
Yeah.
So it's like a double thing. Like, Denny did one thing to Chase Elliott, and then he did the thing to Ryan Blaney, which caused a big wreck. And
the good thing is it got people talking about NASCAR, got people talking about the race, as you are and as we did yesterday and today. So it was if nothing else, it was an exciting finish. Martinsville always has exciting races, and typically these kind of finishes where if you're in the lead, unless you have got clearly the best car that can on its own get some separation, you are in danger of getting somebody's nose on your bumper and you're going to end up in the wall. It's just the way things happen at Martinsville. All right, thank you for your phone call. It's a Talking Tuesday here on Sports Talk, and we were up at Clemson, and we were over at USC today. The Gamecocks in Georgia going to go at it at 3:30 on Saturday afternoon in Athens, and you were over there with Muschamp today, Willie P.
And he certainly was, he being Will Muschamp, concerned about Georgia being the most complete team they've seen.
They've got an explosive football team that's been very dominant this year. I think you start, obviously, offensively with the running back position and Nick Chubb and Sony Michel and DeAndre Swift. And they've got a stable of backs that are all explosive guys that have they've run the ball extremely well this year. I think the one thing you look at their offensive football team where they've improved from year one to year two is on their offensive line. I think they're blocking extremely well up front and getting a hat on a hat. They don't give up many negative plays or sacks. So it's a football team that's been very efficient offensively. Jake Fromm's done an outstanding job at the quarterback position of taking care of the football and managing their offense. He shows arm talent. He's been accurate with the football when they've asked him to throw the football. You look at the Missouri game, I think there's 4 or 5 explosive plays on third down where he's creating explosives down the field against tight coverage. Really good playmakers on the perimeter, Godwin and Ridley and Javon Wims, a guy we recruited here, obviously. Miko Hardeman, who's done a really very nice job in their return game. But a guy that's they're getting the ball in his hands in a really good stable of tight ends with Nada and Warner and Blazevich and those guys. Defensively, again, a veteran group, juniors and seniors across the board, and they're too deep. Guys that been watching for a long time. Dominic Sanders is a guy that's probably going to break their interceptions record from Tucker High School there in Atlanta, but a really good football player. Aaron Davis plays everything for him. J.R. Reed's been a good addition for him this year. That's done a nice job for him. Malcolm Parrish has been a corner that started for him for a long time. And Tyreek McGee's a guy that's come along, played well for him. Roquan Smith probably leads their defense, a guy that plays really fast and physical. I think there'll be 2 really good linebacking cores on display on Saturday. 2 outstanding cores, our guys and theirs. The guys that play the game the way it's supposed to be played. Dalvin Bellamy and Lorenzo Carter up front. Trenton Thompson and John Atkins and the guys inside there. Those guys have all played a bunch of football, and guys we got a lot of respect for. They got really good team speed, so obviously their kicking game has been really good, and Miko's done a nice job returning kicks for them. But injury-wise for us, the offensive linemen are fine. Malik's the one that I would say is the furthest away from being totally healthy. Chad Terrell ran today and looked good. We'll evaluate him again tomorrow. But other than that, we should be good to go.
I know that it seems like you can put an avenue towards any team to win any game. I'm just having a hard time finding an avenue for South Carolina to win this football game.
Well, number one, they'll have to play the best game they've ever played under Muschamp. Number 2, their defensive game plan, I think you just got to sell out against the run against Georgia and put 7, 8 in the box.
Make Jacob Fromm beat you.
And also make Georgia drive the football. South Carolina's been really good against in the red zone. So if you can somehow keep their backs from breaking off the big play, and I think in the press conference today, Muschamp alluded to the number of big plays that Georgia has had. Now, here we are talking about it, and nobody's been able to stop them yet from doing that. And I'm not saying South Carolina is going to be capable of doing that, but that's what you got to do.
Their average touchdown drive possession time, 2 minutes, 31 seconds. 12 of their touchdown drives have been between 1 minute and 2 minutes.
Yeah, you got to avoid the big strike.
And they go with the running style, but they do add tempo to it. If you notice, Georgia will run up to the line of scrimmage, and sometimes on the first count, snap and hand it off. So you have to watch for their rhythm. Corn, the best defense for South Carolina is to try to put together some long offensive drives of 5 to 6 minutes if you can pull it off. But they have that veteran defense. But Georgia, just like Alabama's defense, dare you to throw it deep, and you got to take your shots.
They run an average of 5.6 plays per scoring drive. The most plays run, or they basically have 8 scoring drives with 4 plays. That's the most amount of plays they've had on a scoring drive.
If they can figure out a way to put the game on Jake Fromm, I think that would be in their favor if they can figure out a way to do that. All right, back with Sweeney in a moment.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
All right, coming up, we'll hear from Dabo Sweeney here on Sports Talk. Tigers getting ready for NC State. We'll also give you the recruiting report for tonight. If you want to join in on the program, 800-956-7266 is the phone number. 800-956-7266. And, of course, Sports Talk here on a nightly basis, brought to you by South Carolina Electric Cooperative, your electric cooperative across the state of South Carolina, sponsor of the annual Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. To find out more what the co-ops are doing all around the state, be sure to visit ecsc.org and save the date, December 9th, for the Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. Also, tickets are available through November 24th. They're only $15. Site touchstoneenergybowl.com. That's touchstoneenergybowl.com. And if you want to have a vote, well, in terms of the public vote for Mr. Football, you can do that at scliving.coop, COOP/football. Got 5 finalists there for Mr. Football. All right, up at Clemson today. It was funny. Ron Morris, former sports writer for the State, who everybody knows who Ron Morris is, who had his dust up or two with Steve Spurrier over the years, was in the audience because he's doing a bunch of writing for different publications, and he was up there to write something on Clemson. And Dabo comes walking in, and he sees Ron, and he and Ron are friends, of course. And Dabo breaks into a big smile, and he goes, well, I'll tell you what, in honor of the HBC, I'm just not going to do this news conference right now while Ron's in here. Reflecting on the time that Spurrier stormed out of a press conference. Oh, that was an unbelievable moment. Unbelievable moment. Anyway, Dabo did get on with things about NC State, even though State's coming off a loss at Notre Dame. Plenty of respect for the Wolfpack, which right now leads the Atlantic Division. So this obviously is a huge game, and Sweeney knows that State is a formidable opponent.
Big challenge with NC State. This is a really, really good football team. That's why it's come down to these two teams. I mean, in November, and you got two teams that are well positioned to try to win the division, and so it's exciting to be a part of these type of games. This is playoff football. That's what it really comes down to, so be a big challenge heading up there. Really impressed with this football team. Biggest thing that jumps out at you is the veterans that they have. I mean, they got 21 starters back, and 19 of them are graduates, seniors, or redshirt juniors, and that is very rare in college football. So, very, very experienced, well-coached, and talented football team. The 2 losses that they've had, they just had some critical errors, critical mistakes, and, turnovers and things like that. But this is a team that's really capable of playing with anybody. And there's no question. They're physical in the trenches on both sides. I think definitely the best D-line we've played. All 4 of their starters are NFL guys, and they really play about 7 or 8 guys. Got a lot of depth there. Very active at backer. Forced the issue, played downhill. Got good experience on the back end, and then offensively up front. Every single one of them hogs is back, and they really understand their scheme. Do a great job of creating distortion in your defensive line with their stretch zone scheme. They do a great job of presentation. Very seldom do they just line up and run a play. There's always some type of motion or shift or something going on, and just a bunch of smart guys that know what they're doing. And when you have a veteran team like that, you kind of get to kind of another level of nuances within a system. And that's where they are right now offensively. A bunch of good skill, 3, 12, 11, all them receivers, big, strong, can play. Number 7 is special. He is electric. Gillespie, the other running back, he's downhill, 25. He came into the game last week, and I thought ran really hard, really tough. And number one is he's one of the best players that has probably come through this conference. Just all around instinctual, versatile football player. I mean, he does it all. I mean, you don't really know where. I mean, he plays tailback, plays tight end, plays receiver. He's a returner. He does everything. Number 7's a returner. He took one to the house on us up there a couple years ago. Just really good players all around this quarterback, who I think is an outstanding player.
Okay, Dabo Swinney talking about State, and Dave Doran, the coach at State, really comes to another crossroads in his coaching career at State. Got the team off after losing to South Carolina to a great start and then lost to Notre Dame. Last year had a very good team, had a very good record when they played Clemson. Had a chance to win that game, missed a field goal late. Clemson won in overtime, and State went right down the tubes. And this was going to be the year that they broke through and did something big. Well, they're not going to make the playoff now, but they can still win their division, and they have to beat Clemson to do that. But they still have – NC State is only 4-0 in ACC play, so they've got 4 more league games to play, including Clemson. Well, after this, Clemson will have just 1 more league game to play.
Yeah, head-to-head win over Clemson could give them the division, could give them an opportunity to play in the championship game, could get them an opportunity in New Year's Six Bowl. So still a lot on the table for them as well, even though they can't make the playoff.
They'll go the Orange Bowl if they win the ACC championship. They go the Orange Bowl since they won't be in the playoff.
Brent Venables is good at flushing his defense over the past week and going on to the next challenge. But still some shift there when you're looking at that option and then have to go with this versatile attack of NC State. And they have to take confidence from last year when they should have won the football game if they could hit a chip shot field goal, which they missed. And what they have to do early in the football game, if you're Clemson, is follow that same formula, except the formula that didn't work against Syracuse, is get a lead early, put doubt in your opponent at home, and then let your defense turn them loose. They have to do that in Raleigh.
Only 2 comps between them. State beat Syracuse at home 33-25. And beat Louisville at home 39-25. Of course, Clemson lost to Syracuse, won at Louisville. So, and that's pretty much by about the same spread there. So, pretty similar there. But State did beat Syracuse, but that was in Raleigh. So listen, this will be a tough ball game for Clemson. There's no question that the State is at home. They're going to be as emotional as they can possibly be. It's their big opportunity on the big stage to step up and do something with Dave Doran in his 5th year. And they've got to play that way. And, of course, Clemson realizes there's no room for no margin of error for them already having 1 loss. They've got to win out to get into the playoff. And I think, Dabo Swinney and his people realize their playoff season starts this week.
And it's going to be interesting looking at what the road is left for them, because that Florida State game, while Florida State is down, that is one you can't overlook. You can't obviously overlook the game against Citadel. And, of course, the game at the end of the year is always one that you throw the records out, as they say.
Boy, you already had to say that, huh? It's not even November, and you're coming with the rivalry cliche.
What's wrong with that?
Well, it's just a cliche. It's a useless rivalry cliche.
Have
you ever seen anybody throw records out the window that maybe
Disco Demolition Night in
That's
Comiskey Park?
That's the only time.
But
a coworker of mine, that was his idea.
If you think over the last decade, Corn, and maybe the last decade and a half, in this rivalry as we look ahead, seems to be the best team has won the football game. Can you say a real big upset in the series in the last decade and a half?
Between Clemson and State?
Clemson and South Carolina.
Oh, between Clemson and South Carolina. Oh, you switched on me there. Yeah, I mean, typically when those two play, the better team has come away with the win. And Clemson has been, by and large, the better team over the history of the series, and the Gamecocks have had their moments. And when they play at the end of this month in Columbia, I don't think it'll be anything like it was at Clemson last year. But today, I still couldn't pick against Clemson losing to the Gamecocks at this point. Top of the hour break. Check, check, check. 1, 2. Check 1, 2. You ready? Pro, can you hold down? Get this done real quick. All right, here we go in 3, 2, 1. Dormant offensive lineman Jordan McFadden has been a Virginia Tech commitment. Clemson has made some inroads in trying to turn him. This past weekend, he took his official visit to Virginia Tech, and that seemed to stabilize things somewhat for the Hokies. He said that the advantage the Hokies have on Clemson right now did increase following that visit. He might go back to Virginia Tech for at least one more game. He's got an official visit to Clemson coming up on the weekend of the Citadel game. Oh, no, it's going to be the Florida State game. Crap. Take it from the top. I was getting a little wordy there. In 3, 2, 1. Dormant offensive lineman Jordan McFadden has been a Virginia Tech commitment. Clemson's been making inroads, but he took his official to Blacksburg this past weekend. He said the Hokies are still strong with him. He'll take his official visit to Clemson in November, probably for the Florida State weekend if he can get that set up. Let's do that again. Let's do that again. Yes. Third time the charm in 3, 2, 1. Dormant offensive lineman Jordan McFadden has been a Virginia Tech commitment. Clemson has made some inroads in trying to turn him. He went to Virginia Tech this past weekend for his official visit. That got him feeling a little bit stronger towards the Hokies. He will still take his official visit to Clemson this month. Clemson wants him for the Citadel weekend, but he wants to come in for the Florida State weekend. Defensive back Devon Wilson of Miami took his official visit to USC this past weekend. He's been a Florida commitment. With the situation there now, it's a good opportunity for USC to perhaps flip him. His coach said the Gamecocks did a really good job with him on his official visit, and he is looking hard at South Carolina now. USC offensive line commitment Jesus Gibbs took an unofficial visit to Virginia Tech last Saturday. I don't think so. Phil Kornbluth, South Carolina Radio Network Sports.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Okay, they have started the countdown of the first top 25 from the College Football Playoff Committee. NC State is 20. Mississippi State is 16. We've done 25 through 16 at this point. We'll continue to keep an eye on that and see where Clemson falls. I do think the Tigers will be outside the top 4 this time around.
Virginia Tech 13, Auburn 14 as they put up the next set of rankings. Oklahoma State 11.
So I think
6, either 5 or 6.
I think the top 4 will be in this order: Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame.
I have that except flip Ohio State, Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
I would flip and say, surprisingly, I think Georgia may be number 1 because of strength of schedule.
Yeah, I do. I mean, that'd be possible. Just, but Alabama's it's
Alabama.
Yeah, and they just look so good.
Yes.
And they just beat everybody so badly.
Come on, stop spewing that rat poison.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're keeping a close eye on that, and we'll break in here as soon as we get the word on Clemson and others. Let me go ahead and do the recruiting report for tonight, if that's okay with everybody.
You got it.
Dorman offensive lineman Jordan McFadden has been a Virginia Tech commitment. Clemson has made some inroads with him in trying to turn him. That tide was stemmed a little bit this past weekend when McFadden made his official visit to Virginia Tech. He's been there several times. Really didn't see anything that he didn't already know, just got more comfortable with the players and the coaches, things like that, and Virginia Tech is still on him hard. Clemson, of course, is continuing to recruit him extremely hard as well. And so he might go back to Virginia Tech for one more game, and Clemson's going to get him in for an official. He said they want him for the Citadel weekend, but that's his birthday weekend and his mom's birthday weekend. So he wants to come in for the Florida State game weekend after next. And then after that visit, that Clemson visit, soon after that, he'll make his final decision. Defensive back, Devon Wilson of Miami has been a Florida commitment, but events over the weekend there certainly have changed some things in his thinking. He took an official to USC last weekend, and as he was flying home Sunday afternoon, the Gators fired their coach. So all that kind of works in South Carolina's favor. He had a good visit, and Florida is in turmoil. His coach, Max Edwards, said that he enjoyed the South Carolina visit, and he said because of what's happened in Florida, things might work out as far as him going to South Carolina. Like the campus, the atmosphere, he likes Travaris Robinson. Everything was positive. He said there ain't no telling what might happen now. Edwards said when he talked to Wilson, he didn't speak about the Florida situation. Wilson is scheduled for official visits to Georgia and Florida later in November. The coach is not sure of the status of those visits. Talking with some folks today about linebacker Channing Tindall from Spring Valley. And one of the folks I was talking to with some knowledge from the Clemson side of things was telling me that, Channing Tindall said out at the opening and told some people that Clemson wasn't showing any interest in him, that they had their linebackers and just didn't have the interest in him, and thus they weren't recruiting him. This person told me that from talking with Brent Venables, who is the recruiter, the feeling they got back, Venables, the feeling he got back from Tindall was that there was no interest in Clemson from him, that it was going to be all South Carolina for him. And now we see the offer that he gets from Clemson on Friday, kind of out of the blue, which makes you wonder if Tindall sent a message up that way that, hey, I would be open to visiting you and talking more with you about your situation. And there also seems to be amongst the analysts on the internet, the various websites, some at least are starting to believe he's going to go to Georgia. I know there's family connections to Georgia, but he's been so much to USC, and they've done such a good job trying to get him, and the opportunity for early playing time is there. It's the hometown school. I really can't see him going anywhere but South Carolina. And we may find out sooner than later. He may be going to Georgia this weekend for the USC-Georgia games. We'll have to wait and see on that. USC offensive lineman commitment Jesus Gibbs took an unofficial visit to Virginia Tech Saturday. The Hokies are pushing to flip him. And, of course, South Carolina trying to hold on to him. Clemson target offensive lineman Jamari Sawyer of Atlanta did not make his official visit to Ohio State this past weekend. He is scheduled for Clemson November 10th, and he will also visit Georgia.
Clemson is at least in the top 6. They just released the 7 through 10 in this order: Penn State, TCU, Wisconsin, and Miami in the college football playoff first rankings.
Yeah, they're going to be 5 or 6. Defensive back Savion Smith of Mississippi Gulf Coast Junior College told 24/7 Sports USC is still one of the schools recruiting him hard. His season ended last week. He's now turning his attention towards recruiting. He said Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Alabama also are recruiting him hard. He's also getting attention from Utah, Washington, and Central Florida. USC commitment defensive end Kingsley Enegbar told 24/7 Sports he has set an official visit with Notre Dame for November 18th. The Irish just recently offered. Better keep an eye on that one. Clemson target defensive back Kelvin Joseph of Baton Rouge plans to visit Alabama Saturday. He has an official visit to Clemson set for November 10th. And in basketball, Clemson offered 2019 6'9" Jalen Withers of Charlotte. That's according to Phenon Hoops. He visited Clemson Saturday. And Clemson on Monday was in for a visit with 6'2" Brendan Tucker, Lawrenceville, Georgia, 2019 class, and he plans to take an unofficial visit to Clemson at some point. That's recruiting, available on our website, SportsTalkSC.com, and on Twitter. Use the hashtag STRecruiting.
Notable in the first college football playoff rankings, Wisconsin ranked number 9th. They are number 4 in both the AP and coaches polls. Committee looked at the schedule and rated them 5 spots lower as a result.
Well, maybe the strength of schedule is going to weigh heavily on their mind.
And I think if you're Clemson, you have to have a little respect that Miami, who is skated by the skin of their teeth, even though they play great football, they're 10th, and their schedule is pretty much comparable to Wisconsin's Big Ten schedule at this juncture.
Could be a feather in their cap for Clemson, at least, because we were talking about this earlier about how, especially in that month of September, they played a ranked team basically darn near every week except for the Kent State contest. They played Auburn, they played Louisville, and they were able to get wins in those opportunities.
Well, again, as we noted, I think Clemson's probably played the strongest schedule, or one of the strongest schedules of the top teams that are under consideration.
Wow. Georgia number 1.
Ding, 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 ding.
Pro was
what
right.
Did I win?
Yep.
Pro was right.
You win another night in the seats. Alabama is 2. So Georgia, Alabama, 1, 2. Could Clemson slide into the 4 on strength of schedule? Possibly. Surprised he didn't give us, well, I guess they've always done it top 4 and then 5 and 6.
Right.
Waiting on number 3. Who do you think?
Notre Dame.
We're waiting. Hopefully they'll get this done before our break in a little over a minute. Come on, people. Quit talking so much. Throw the name up there. We're still waiting for the next one to pop up.
Trying to win the quarter hour, Corn. They're trying to get a second quarter hour out of this.
Whatever. I don't care about their quarter hour.
I know.
I care about my break coming up.
I think they did this because Nick Saban, I don't care about any kind of thing this time of year. We're just trying to be the best football team. We don't look at polls. Yeah. Well, okay.
Well, he doesn't have to look because he's always there in the top. So.
Exactly.
They're still yakking, so we haven't seen number 3 pop up just yet. There it is, Notre Dame.
Who said it?
Notre Dame is 3. So we've gotten as far as having them in the top 4. We've gotten 3 of them right. We're 3 for 3. We'll have to wait and see what number 4. We've got about a minute here and see what number 4 is going to be. So number 4 is either Clemson, Ohio State, or Oklahoma.
In this brief era, is this the first time we've seen a coach on the hot seat about to be fired one year, and he's number 3 in the first poll this year?
This is going to be a race.
Yeah, and that shows you something about patience and sticking with your guy and giving a guy a chance to turn it around when he has a bad season. If you believe in that guy and feel like he is the guy to get it done for you. All right, we've got about 8 seconds. We're still waiting for number 4 to pop up there. If you're listening to us, I'm afraid we'll have to tell you when we come back from
Clemson 4.
Clemson is 4. Wow.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Well, are you surprised?
Yes.
Yes.
Very surprised.
Georgia, Alabama with a strength of schedule of 38, the weakest of the top four. Alabama's strength of schedule is 38. Georgia, strength of schedule is 8. Clemson's strength of schedule is 4. And Notre Dame's strength of schedule is 7. Yeah, Alabama, now it gets tougher. LSU, Mississippi State, Auburn, 3 of their last 4. So their strength of schedule will go up. They survive that, then obviously they will prove that they are worthy. But what do you think? 800-956-7266. I really thought Clemson would be outside the top 4. So this keeps their streak alive. 2015, 2016, all the rankings, Clemson was in the top 4, and now 2017, Clemson begins in the top 4.
What I see is if we want to, skirt around the fact that the 2 teams that's been in the championship game the last 2 years, Alabama and Clemson, I think they get some juice from that. Because if it's Alabama and you're 38, and if this is your first time in there, I don't think they're in the top 4, but they're Alabama. Clemson, I think, now has the trademark that they're sitting there, because if you look at it, Clemson does not really, in my mind, get penalized for that loss to Syracuse.
No.
Whereas Penn State loses a 1-point game on the road at the Horseshoe against Ohio State, and they're dropped to 7.
Yeah.
Just the fact that they played all, I think, gives them that feather in the cap. And again, they're going to have a road game next year at Texas A&M. That game will play the same type of role, even though A&M isn't the kind of strong team like an Auburn is. The fact that they're playing that game on the road in a place like College Station, which is a raucous atmosphere, you need to get rewarded for playing these games. And I think that's what the playoff committee is saying. You get rewarded for playing these types of contests.
Yeah. And, you look at Ohio State and you look at Oklahoma, 5 and 6, and Oklahoma has a strength of schedule of 2. Oklahoma has a strength of schedule of 5. And right now they're on the outside looking in. I mean, but this is, you got 2 undefeated teams in there, and then it's followed by 1-loss teams. And the 1-loss teams are the ones who'll be complaining as this thing plays on out, because how do you weigh this team's loss against another team's loss, which had the better loss, so to speak? You talk about, Clemson losing to Syracuse, but Penn State loses by a point and blows a game at Ohio State that they had in control for much of it on the road. Which was the better loss? When you weigh the 2 evenly, I mean, certainly the Penn State loss was better because they lost to a top on the road by a point. Clemson lost to a 24-point underdog by how many points was it? 4 or 5 points? What was that final spread? You remember? So anyway, that's the kind of controversy that's going to creep up here as we go through the last month of the regular season.
But again, those are humans sitting at that table, and you got to get some juice from looking at that defense is still salty, and they've been in the first 2 championship games of this particular era, and maybe they deserve some juice from that.
Well, they say, if I remember correctly, each year stands on its own.
Right.
Each team is judged on its own. But they also say,
whether you believe that or not remains to be.
They also say their goal is to get the 4 best teams.
Well, the one thing that I do say that they do believe is that they start from scratch every week. They don't necessarily look from week to week. And that is one thing that you can say they have held up to over the balance of this committee. And that's the one, I think, criticism that was levied on them when they started the system is, will they vary the rankings week to week? And they have. And that's something that they can be commended by.
Okay, so Clemson is right there. They control their own destiny. They don't have to worry about anybody doing anything for them. As long as they win and keep winning impressively, they're going to be probably out at the Rose Bowl in what, January? I guess the semifinals are January 1st, New Year's Day. Is that right? And so now the next hurdle for the Tigers is NC State. They are favored to win to Raleigh and win on Saturday afternoon. And, every game gets bigger now as you move forward. And Dabo Swinney, of course, makes no bones about it. When he talks about the next opponent, he only puts that next opponent at one level.
It's the biggest game of the year. I mean, it is. It's really no different. I mean, it's the biggest game of the year. And if we hadn't won last week, then this game wouldn't be as big. It just kind of ramps up as you go through November, from an outside standpoint. But from a team, you got 12 opportunities. And at the end of the day, every year, we just want to be the best we can be. And, right now we can still be 11-1. So you got to win 8, and that's all we're trying to do. And yeah, we all understand the picture of, okay, if you lose the game, you're most likely not going to win the division. But I guess they'd have to lose their last 3. That's probably not going to happen. So just take care of your business, and you don't have to worry about all that. But, you want to win the championship every single year, and you want to stay in the hunt as long as you can. So we're going to do everything we can to try to win the game and keep pushing forward. But the season's not going to be over regardless. If we're not good enough to win it, you tip your hat, you shake the hand, you move on to the next one, and you go on to your next goals. And again, trying to be the best you can be, whatever particular season. If you're good enough to win it, you're still in it, but it's not over. You got to keep playing. So we don't really sit around worrying about, what if. We just focus on just having a great Tuesday practice and just put our best foot forward. If you do that, then you can live whatever results you get.
The last 2 years, you guys have not been out of the top 4 in each of the playoff rankings once they started. So you kind of controlled your own destiny. If you're not in the top 4 tonight when it comes out, how will you look at that moving forward? Any difference how you look at it last 2 years?
It's 0. I mean, they could have us 10th. It just doesn't matter. I mean, it just really doesn't matter. I mean, if they have us 2nd and we get our butt beat this week, well, it don't matter. If they have us 10th, but yet we went out, we'll be where we need to be. I think we've played a pretty good schedule. Played a lot of teams that have won a bunch of games, and a lot of teams that have been in position to win some others, some very competitive teams. So, we just got to take care of business. I mean, it's that simple. It just doesn't matter. If you win, I think when all said and done, you have an opportunity whenever the last poll comes out. That's the one that matters. And that's when you can really get a real answer to that question as far as, how I would feel or how I view it. It just is irrelevant. I know it's matters to the fans and all that stuff, but it is so irrelevant to what's going to happen in Raleigh this weekend. It just doesn't matter.
Dabo Swinney from earlier today up at Clemson. And so the Tigers number 4 in this first ranking of the committee, and going to add a little extra spice to the rest of the season. Of course, we knew they were going to be somewhere in the top 6. Most of the projections I saw prior to tonight had the Tigers outside the top 4. So you never know what that committee is going to do.
And the weirdest thing, too, about that number 5-6 situation is that those are 2 teams that met head-to-head. And you could argue the lone reason that Oklahoma is ranked ahead of Ohio State, despite the fact that you might feel the Big Ten is stronger than the Big 12, is that Oklahoma has that head-to-head win.
Yeah. And by the way, now, if it holds up like this, which it probably won't because there's going to be some things happening.
Well, there'll be some machinations.
But Georgia, if Georgia stays number 1 and Clemson stays number 4, of course, they're going to play in the semifinal, and that would be in New Orleans because Georgia, the number 1 team, gets placed closest to home, and New Orleans has one of the semifinals. The other one's out in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. So if it stays that way, then that wouldn't be too harsh of a trip for the Georgia Clemson fans, and boy, would they eat that up.
You and I are at 2 very good football games this weekend with Georgia, South Carolina, and Clemson, NC State. But how big is that Bedlam game going to be between Oklahoma State, 5 versus 11?
Mason Rudolph.
That's the elimination game. That's the first elimination game.
That's going to be awesome.
All right, we'll be right back. Kerry Tharp from Darlington coming up next on Sports Talk, and more Will Muschamp to come. Well, the College Football Playoff Committee is not the only one dealing with controversy when it comes to ranking these teams week in and week out. NASCAR always dealing with controversy at the end of races in certain tracks, Martinsville being one of them, as we welcome in KT, Kerry Tharp, president of Darlington. Darlington has plenty of controversial finishes as well, but KT, this one at Martinsville this past Sunday, a little surprised there hasn't been more, maybe I'm not seeing it or hearing it because I've been busy with football, but I would thought there would have been a little more outrage over the way that race ended on Sunday.
Well, you know, Phil, I was there actually standing not too far outside that catch fence between turns 3 and 4 when I saw what happened. Denny Hamlin, you know, wrecking Chase Elliott there on the last couple of laps. You know, it's been a pretty hot topic, though, in the NASCAR circles. A lot of chatter about it on NASCAR radio and those types of things. And you know, things like that are going to, you expect things like that maybe to happen at short tracks. But, I mean, Hamlin, without question, just loaded him into the safer barrier there and ended Chase Elliott's chances of winning his first career victory. So, you know, those race car drivers have long memories, so I'm sure Chase will put that in the back of his mind, although his focus really has to be on trying to qualify for the finals now, as with 3 races to go. But yeah, that was quite the finish at Martinsville on Sunday.
You know, Tuesday's usually a penalty day, and I was kind of expecting something to come out, but I guess NASCAR just looked at that as a racing incident and did not see any malice in what Hamlin did.
Well, you know, Phil, I've been on both sides. Worked at NASCAR for 11 years, and we had to deal with these types of things, and we'd go back and forth on whether or not to penalize somebody for doing something like this. And certainly, you know, Hamlin had every intent in moving Elliott out of the way. Now, what I think happened was that he tried to probably get up under him and nudge him out of the way, and he wound up just totally wrecking him. So, you know, while it didn't look so good, I think, you know, when Hamlin went back and probably looked at the tape and realized what he'd done, you know, he did issue an apology later that evening. But, you know, NASCAR is thinking that on a short track, this is likely to happen or it could happen. Let's let the dust settle and let it take care of itself on down the road. But, you know, if this would have happened between, you know, somebody maybe who wasn't in the playoffs, if somebody would have hunted out Chase Elliott and sent him into the wall, maybe that's a different story. But these were 2 guys going for the win, trying to punch their ticket to the finals. And so I think NASCAR looked at it that way and said, you know, we'll let it go this time.
Yeah, it's weird. You know, sometimes NASCAR, and even this is a cross sports situation, sometimes a lot of these guys have a way of either policing themselves or this thing has a way of policing itself and working itself out. Fact of the matter is those 2 guys are low men on the totem pole when it comes to the rankings here for the next cut down. I know that there's a very small margin between 4 to 7 between Harvick all the way down to Denny Hamlin, but in a way, I don't think Denny Hamlin created a lot of friends out there, at least when it comes to next week.
Not at all, Will. And, you know, Denny Hamlin was racing in his home state. He got out of that race car and started doing an interview on the big screen, and he was greeted with a loud chorus of boos. And this is a home state boy. I mean, he's from the Commonwealth of Virginia, and so yeah, there's no question he earned himself a little bit of a bad guy. And excuse me, I think Chase Elliott probably picked up some fans. You know, by the way he handled it. And so I think that, you know, it's a little give and take on both, but I certainly think that Hamlin now, as he goes to Texas, he's going to get booed at Texas. I think Chase Elliott will get a lot more cheers, but as Kyle Busch used to say, if they're not making any noise, then that's when you got a problem.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think Hamlin, I really think though at the end of the deal, Hamlin probably realized he'd gone too far. But you know, it's racing, and you know how it is when you get so close to trying to get into the championship round. You know, you'll almost do anything you can to do to get there, and I think that's what he did. And I think he just kind of made a little mistake in judgment there.
But KT, you know, you look at a NASCAR fan and those that've been in it for a long time and they've waxed nostalgic, remembering number 3, and how glorious it is to cross the finish line with somebody else's paint on your bumper. And I think some of those fans just love to have that.
Yeah.
You know, I bet there were NASCAR fans cheering. Now that's what I like. That's what I want.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Tom, I tell you what, and you know, I think you're exactly right. And I think there should be more races at short tracks, a place like Martinsville, a place like Bristol, where you can beat and bang and get it mixed up and that type of thing. But, you know, at the end of that race, and I was there, and it was 42 degrees. Let me tell you what, gentlemen, there was no balmy day in Martinsville on Sunday. And but those fans were into it. They were cheering and booing at every which way that it went. And you know, it did bring out the best, I think, in the sport. When I say that, it's a sport that's built on emotion. It's a sport that's built on competition. And the fans, like Tom said, are used to seeing those types of things. They're used to seeing guys, fenders coming across the start finish line. You got somebody else's fender on your right quarter panel. So I think that was good for NASCAR. And if I'm Eddie Gossage, out at Texas, and where we're racing this weekend, I mean, it's set up perfectly for him because this is a promoter's dream.
Yeah, I'd put the black hat on Denny and let it go. So,
no question.
Kyle Busch is in to the championship round, and then Truex, Keselowski. They've got between those two the separation. Keselowski 3. Separation is pretty big between Keselowski and Harvick in 4, and then it gets tight. I mean, Harvick's got a 3-point lead on Johnson. Johnson's 3 up on Blaney. So we go into race number 2, sort of your moving day race, because you want to be either the winner and end the next round or in really good shape when you go to Phoenix.
Right, exactly. And, you know, I think really the only 2 safe people right now really are Kyle Busch, and I would think Martin Truex Jr. because of his points lead. And if I'm another driver like Harvick or Johnson, you know, I either want Truex to win or Kyle Busch to win. I don't want somebody like Denny Hamlin to win or Chase Elliott to win or Keselowski to win, because that probably puts me even further back in the pack and puts more pressure on me when you go to Phoenix. And so, you know, there's a lot of pressure on these guys and these teams right now, because it's getting down to the nitty gritty. 2 races to go, Texas this weekend and then Phoenix, and then we set the table for the 4 in Homestead, Miami. So, if I'm one of those guys that's kind of teetering on the boundary there, I probably pull it for either Martin Truex Jr. or Kyle Busch if I don't win the race.
Among the playoff contenders, who does Texas Motor Speedway suit the best?
Well, you know, that's a great question. You would think you would want to say Jimmy Johnson because he's been so good there and he won there in the spring, but you know, I don't know if I see it right now in that team. You know, maybe they can muster something up for this weekend and put together a championship effort. I still have to say it's one of the Toyotas, Will, whether that be Denny Hamlin, whether that be Martin Truex Jr. or Kyle Busch. They have been so dominant on the 1.5-mile racetracks, which Texas is. So, yeah, as much as I would like to see or, you know, Jimmy Johnson get out to victory lane and get in those finals, I'd have to say it's one of those Toyotas.
All right. Real quick, 30 seconds. What kind of send-off did Dale Jr. get from Martinsville?
Well, I tell you what, it was pretty cool. There's a community college up there in Martinsville. They endowed a scholarship in his name, which he absolutely loved. And, you know, and speaking of love, the love of his life, Amy, got to drive the pace car to set the field. And so, not only was that cool, but she has to be the absolutely best looking pace car driver in the history of NASCAR.
She and the baby got to drive the car too.
No question. That's right. I forgot about that.
It's got to be the first pregnant woman to drive a pace car in the history of NASCAR.
Maybe so, man. That's a great point there. So that's a great point.
KT, it's all I make. KT is great points. You have yourself a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you all.
Take care. Kerry Tharp, KT, president of Darlington.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
What is this?
What's that?
The other football.
ESPN goes right from the playoff show to what?
The other football.
Soccer.
The other football.
That's why you keep losing viewers and cord cutters, and you got to fire people left and right because of stupid things.
They
like
throw
that.
that up because they know they're against the World Series.
We do have Miami of Ohio and Ohio tonight for your college football
action
viewing pleasure.
Action.
All right, let me update a little high school football here for you on Sports Talk. Then some final words from Will Muschamp. And our high school report is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. With new auto insurance rates from Farm Bureau, you could be saving a whole lot of money. Even if you received a quote before, rates are now more competitive than ever. So no obligation. Quote today at favrates.com. Give you the latest rankings out today, the final regular season rankings from the high school sports reports. 5A, it's Fort Dorchester, T.L. Hanna, Dutch Fork, Conway, and Dorman this afternoon, telling me that Hanna is really, really good. No big surprise there, and watch them to win the upper state. Spring Valley 6, followed by Hillcrest, Sumter, Gaffney, and Greenwood. In 4A, it's South Point number 1, followed by North Myrtle Beach, Hartsville, North Augusta, and Greer. Then South Aiken, Berkeley, Eastside, Greenville, and Belton Honeypath. In 3A, Chapman's number 1, followed by Dillon, Gilbert, Newberry, Emerald. Then Seneca, Fairfield Central, Timberland, Walhalla, Palmetto. 2A is Abbeville, followed by Saluda, Carvers Bay, Lee Central, Bamberg, Earhart. Then it's Barnwell, Andrews, Southside Christian, Gray Collegiate, and Central. And in 1A, Lamar is number 1, followed by Hemingway, Williston, Elko, C.E. Murray, Baptist Hill, Lakeview, Ridge Spring, Monetta, Cross, Wagner, Sally, and McCormick. There you go. High school rankings, courtesy of the High School Sports Report. So, the Gamecocks get the first chance at upsetting the apple cart.
They do. It's funny. We've been talking a lot about the college football playoff rankings during this hour. Clemson ranked number 4 behind Notre Dame, Alabama, and top-ranked Georgia, where Will Muschamp and the Gamecocks go between the hedges in Sanford Stadium. A lot of people, but since Sunday really, have been trying to get inside the minds of not only the Gamecock players and the head coach and try and tap into any of the hype that has been created as a result of this matchup. Will Muschamp has and wants none of it.
Each week for us is all the same. Every week's a season as far as how we approach things, and certainly we have respect for all of our opponents and got respect for Georgia. But you know, at the end of the day, it comes back to our preparation, how we prepare. We had a very good start today. Really pleased with the attitude and the effort and the enthusiasm we had on the field today. And I know our guys will go compete. We plan on showing up.
Well, you've been in a number of these games, these big, impactful games that matter in a bigger picture. A lot of your guys haven't. Is there anything that you as coaches can do to kind of get them through this, get them to understand what's at stake and not worry about nerves and distractions, things like that?
You know, I think as much as anything, it's just kind of the approach of our program every day and then treating every game the same as far as how we approach it. There's no any bigger game than another one. You know, our guys understand this is a big game. I don't need to tell them that. They get that part of it. And so I just think that the methodical approach of how we go about, we don't treat anything differently. Our meetings aren't any longer. There's no more emphasis on what we're trying to do. It's obviously we respect our opponent and we show them the tendencies of our opponent, the things we feel like we need to do to win the game. And that's how we approach it. And certainly I think that's where you rely a little bit more on your older players to steer the young guys in the right direction as far as their focus is concerned. And certainly we've got a veteran staff and understands if the focus isn't there. And that certainly we try and get that back in line.
What kind of boost does that give your recruiting effort being involved in a game like this?
Well, I don't think any exposure is going to be positive for you. You know, as far as it's the right kind of exposure you want, as far as those things are concerned. And I think that and from a recruiting standpoint, the number one thing in year 2 is people see progress from where we were 3 years ago. And that's what they need to be able to see is positive progress. in our program. They see the operations facility. They see the support. They see the game day atmosphere. They see Columbia. They see all of the positive things that are happening here, because the arrow certainly is pointed up right now, and we've got to continue to build on that momentum.
I also want to say something, because I made mention of this after the game. Number one, stop asking about bowl eligibility, because this group obviously had higher goals than bowl eligibility, and it's not necessarily something that should be looked at as a, quote, standard. It should be looked at as a baseline goal, and it's not necessarily something that they looked at as anything more than that. So all the questions about bowl eligibility, you're not going to get good answers, number one. And number two, people talking about this game and next week's game as, quote, national TV games. Corn, they're all national TV games inside the SEC. ESPN is a nationally televised game. ESPN2 is a nationally televised game. SEC Network is a nationally televised game. They play on national TV every week. Just because they're playing on a broadcast network this week does not mean that it is more important or more exposure than you normally get. Yes, you get to be playing in the prime window that the SEC has, and you were in the, quote, first or second position this week and next, playing Georgia and Florida on CBS, but it is not any more exposure nor any more important than a normal game that you would have inside your conference.
Yeah, that is true.
That is just my own soapbox thing, because people were kept on asking about this game being on national TV. They're all on national TV.
Yes. Except those who don't have cable can buy.
But it's available nationally.
It's available.
If you have the access.
It's available.
Everything's
to
available.
everybody.
I have to apologize to ESPN. I misspoke. They did not go right to soccer.
But they are going to go to soccer at the top.
They are. But they did have more on the college football playoff.
Paul Feinbaum probably whining about Georgia being ranked ahead of Alabama.
Well, then they go to figure skating, which is sometimes the kind of programming for.
Not quite the time of year yet.
Yeah.
Now, this South Carolina-Georgia game, historically Georgia has had the upper hand, but South Carolina has played Georgia closer over the last 10 years or so. Even in defeat, they've had some tight games. And the Gamecocks have had their opportunity from time to time to put a whooping on the Bulldogs. Now, it's been a while. Well, I mean, Georgia was always good. The only bad Georgia team South Carolina has played in the last little while was last year, and the Gamecocks lost that game on that Sunday. Remember, in Columbia, that was not a real good Georgia team. In Kirby's first year. And so even against good Georgia teams under Spurrier, they more than held their own. Now they're facing, I guess you could call it a great Georgia team. They're the #1 ranked team in the country right now on Saturday. Can the Gamecocks muster the kind of effort and play with the confidence needed to go in and not necessarily pull off the upset, but make it a second half? Let's begin with the idea of this. Can they get it to the second half within reach, and then can they get it to the fourth quarter with a chance?
Think about the Syracuse game from Clemson. What did Syracuse do to Clemson right away? They punched them right in the mouth. Exactly. And that's the thing. You have to show that you are in the fight early. If you don't show that you're in the fight early and you're having to play catch up the entire time, you're not going to have a prayer.
Well, if I'm Coach Muschamp, and I know that Georgia, and this is their modus operandi, and that is to hit you in the mouth first. So I'm going to be truthful to players and say, look, when they hit you in the mouth, when you hit them back, because if they see that you're stunned, they're going to try to take it home and win that football game in the first quarter.
I'm going to be curious of what happens with the coin toss, because remember last weekend, it was the first time that South Carolina lost the coin toss. They played on defense to start the game. I wonder.
And gave up a touchdown.
I wonder if.
Take the damn ball.
I wonder if South Carolina would defer because they'd get the first possession of the second half.
Take the ball.
Take the ball.
Take the ball.
Take the ball.
And we'll give Georgia a chance to get out and get those fans behind them.
And when you take the ball, get that nail out of your back pocket and let the air out of it.
I disagree with both of y'all. I defer.
Yeah. Well, let's see who wins the toss first, and then we'll go from there. Tomorrow, we'll be closer to Georgia. Too close as far as I'm concerned. We'll be in the beautiful town of Aiken.
I want to see more garnet than red and black.
I think there'll be a mixture of both out there. Make sure you come out and join us tomorrow night. Look forward to being there. Thank you, Pro. Thank you, Willie P. And thank you, Brian. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow in Aiken.